supposed to start at 10 a.m., but I'm going to start early because I have to get on with my day. This is going to be a short stream, but nonetheless, it's an important stream for several different reasons, okay? So you guys are going to see what I'm talking about. Now, when something gets into the zeitgeist, as they say, people use it a lot. People refer to it a lot. And I thought this was really awesome because I think even the detractors, the haters, the people who are the people who are funded to uh, try to put down or to try to twist information. I want to show you something. It's a principle and it applies to everything. Everything. Okay? All right. So I'm not using this to be negative. I'm not using this to try and say, oh, we are so right and so correct. I'm using it as a principle. This is why I have some of you in here who they're not even aware of this movement. Okay. This movement is known as Restore the Snyderverse movement. Its first incarnation was the Release the Snyder Cut movement. And it has now morphed into, since we've gotten the Snyder Cut and we realize there's more in store for us, it became Restore the Snyderverse movement. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to get you catch up on it. Robert Mayer Burnett, the guy that you're seeing right now in the picture without audio. I will play audio, don't worry. He actually was pushing for the Snyder Cut at a certain point. He joined at least along with us in pushing for the Snyder Cut. Now, Robert Mayer Burnett has never really been someone who showed was overjoyed or a tremendous fan of Zack Snyder. I think he started joining on the bandwagon when the momentum was coming in, and he realized that this could be something that was a reality. And he started changing his tune from what he once said. And he did sum up what Zack Snyder's movies, at least his DC movies were. He said they were more of heavy metal sort of movies, which is true. Zack Snyder is more like Conan the Barbarian. He's more like heavy metal. He's more like what's the other movie I was thinking of? He's more like the animated something of Zeus. I forgot what the name of it is. He's more like that style. So while Zack is not all out hardcore, full of blood, he's not hardcore Tarantino, for example, or he's not hardcore Michael Bay. Because Zack is not just about violence, okay? He's a bit different, and he's a bit nuanced, but he's heavily influenced by heavy metal. He's heavily influenced by, movies like Conan the Barbarian. Oh, without a doubt. Appearance, physique. He's very particular about certain things. Anyway, let's get to the point, okay? Because I'm going all over the place. I'm not getting to the point. Let me get to the point. Robert Mayer Burnett, he was able to identify Zack Snyder's style after so many years. He said, I kind of get it, what he does with DC. The thing about Robert Mayer Burnett is he tries to straddle the line of being someone who is sort of impartial on things, but there's a lot of stuff he does not get. Robert Mayer Burnett and John Campea were part of Collider videos, Collider stuff, which was a magazine, Hollywood magazine on comic books. And at one time, they were the leading spokespeople when it came to this. And they were assembled with a bunch of other people, some younger people. And so, they would give their contemplations on different movies and stuff. Now, they're more industry people, even though they seem to be independent media. They're still people who worked in the industry. Robert Mayer Burnett worked with Warner Brothers. John Campea worked with, I'm not sure, I think Warner Brothers as well. So because they're former employees of Warner Brothers, they try to, in their own way, promote Warner Brothers and whatever they're putting out. So take this all with a pinch of salt. Now, the important thing to understand is, as I go into this, okay, so let me just go into it, okay, and then I'll read Ray Flores's comments, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. So here we go.
What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve? What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve on? Well, John, you got to restore that Snyderverse. What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve on? Well, John, you got to. What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve on? Well, John, you got to restore that Snyderverse. What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve on? Well, John, you got to restore that Snyderverse. What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve on? Well, John, you got to restore that Snyder. What work do you see here having to be done? What do they need to improve on? Well, John, you got to restore that Snyderverse. No, I'm just kidding. What work do you?
Okay, now, out of the clear blue sky, he's talking about Warner Brothers. He's talking about DC. They're talking about the Superman film. And John Campea is asking Robert Mayer Burnett, he's asking him, he's saying, what do you think Warner Brothers needs to do to improve this film that's coming out, you know, and their slate of movies? And Robert Mayer Burnett, just out of the clear blue sky, just says, you know, but John, you got to restore that Snyderverse, the zeitgeist. And then he says, no, I'm kidding. But I think they're so aware of our movement. You know what was so cool? We saw the Snyder Cut pop up in, release the Snyder Cut. We saw it pop up in cartoons, like the cartoon of Warner Brothers, Harley Quinn cartoon. We saw the Snyder Cut pop up in Barbie movie. We saw Restore the Snyder Cut pop up in actually it was Zack Snyder was brought into Teen Titans. Okay, Zack Snyder has cracked into the zeitgeist, and Zack Snyder is basically a prominent feature, and also Restore the Snyderverse, by the way, not sell Snyderverse to Netflix. Restore the Snyderverse has become part of the zeitgeist, has become part of the pop culture out there. Okay, what does this have to do with any other thing you're promoting or any other thing out there? Once you are a committed movement to something, the important thing is being committed to something and not stopping for anything. It doesn't matter if they kill you. It doesn't matter what happens. The movement moves forward. There's no particular leader of this movement. It's just a movement, and it cannot be crushed. You know, the CIA can try what they want, you know, the FBI, you know, any other letter thing, you know, Mossad or whatever. It cannot stop, what do you call that? M6 can't stop it. Nothing can stop it because the people are voicing what the people want to say. When you have grassroots movements, there are many different strategies people try to stop these movements with. But once a movement gets into the zeitgeist, as is happening with the campus encampments, as is happening with, you have to keep going with the protests, with the marches, with the strikes, with the union workers working, with the veterans. That enters the zeitgeist and everybody catches on. You saw what happened with the encampments. It started in America, then it started to go to Europe, then it went to Africa. All around the world, when something becomes zeitgeist, people can't help but mention it. And that's the power in it. Okay? This is the thing I want to really emphasize on you guys. And therefore, you either go with the flow or you get drowned by it because it's so overwhelming. Now, what the CIA and other agencies, intelligence agencies, try to do is they try to dilute the zeitgeist. They go with it, they infiltrate, and then they try to destroy it from within and weaken it so that people forget what the original movement was about. But even then, if people persist with it, and then remind people, it's always about a sense of history. Remind people where this movement started, where it came from. You have to constantly remind people. See, what makes the Holocaust and the Jews, particularly with the Holocaust. Because in the Holocaust, a lot of people don't talk about is it was 35 million people that died in the Holocaust. It wasn't just Jews. All right. A lot of people died in Poland and all over the place. A lot of people were genocided. But they point out the Jews. And you know why the Jews constantly are reminded? Because they remind people. They do movies on it. They do this. They always pay tribute to it so you will not forget. So our movement is like that. We are able to shape history. We are able to tell the story, and we constantly tell the story. I've seen other people try to write books on it and other things, but they are always secondary to us because we continuously revise the story. We keep on telling the story. We keep on telling the story in this movement because this is a movement. I saw Snyderverse to Netflix rise up for a minute and then it disappeared. You know why that will never prevail over Restore the Snyderverse? You know why? Because the people who keep on pushing that, they tend to want to consolidate all power to themselves. They want their names mentioned. They want themselves mentioned. But that's not what the movement was about. It's never about an individual. It's always about a mission, a purpose. And that's what a lot of these people are missing out. I got so much to tell you guys about the industry and stuff, and I may get to it today, but let's go through this thread. So Reyes Flores, he said, John made a video talking about WB has turned the corner into profitability. His words, then asked Robert Mayer Burnett. When asked, Robert Mayer Burnett said mockingly they should restore the Snyderverse. It reminds me when they mocked at the Snyder Cut, that the Snyder Cut would be announced the same day it was. Funniest thing that could happen. Now, that's what he said. And there's a lot of comments below that has to do with this. Shout out to Ray Flores. After Ray Flores said that, he followed up with this. Then days later, after John Campea praised Zaslav for turning the company around, he makes a video how David Zaslav will fire executives for losing too much money. And he slaps his face. Warner Brothers know what they have. They know what's good and what's not good. That's Robert Mayer Burnett on the studio that released The Flash, Shazam 2, Aquaman 2, Joker 2. Don't forget Blue Beetle. And countless other good movies. Oh boy. These two have been on a roll this year. He has the wrong word for roll, but that's besides the point. And here is Robert Mayer Burnett saying this thing right here.
Think that they're making, I'm like, if Warner Brothers knows what they have, they know what's good and what's not good. And I think that they're making, I'm like, if Warner Brothers knows what they have, they know what's good and what's not good. And I think that they're making, I'm like, if Warner Brothers knows what they have, they know what's good and what's not good. And I think that they're making.
So Robert Mayer Burnett, on seeing that, he was provoked. And so he rose up and he actually responded to him. And he said this, and again, this is the power of the zeitgeist. Ray Flores is nobody. I am nobody. But the movement is so powerful. The movement is so powerful that Robert Mayer Burnett had to respond to Ray Flores. And this is what he said. I stand by this statement. Unlike other films you mentioned, DC Studios is essentially a brand new entity. No, it's not, but anyway. With the express purpose of making films to exploit the rich history of DC Comics. Now, for what he does not understand is DC Studios is simply a rebranding of DC Films. DC Films came into existence in 2017 under Jeff Johns and John Berg, who were the two head or chiefs of DC, the CEOs of DC. So no, that's absolutely false. And following them, it was Walter Hamada, and following Walter Hamada for a very, very, very brief time, The Rock was thought to be head of DC. And then after that was Abdi and DeLuca. I'm sorry, before that was Abdi and DeLuca, sorry. They were temporary DC heads. And then The Rock was thought to be the DC head. And then James Gunn and Peter Safran were considered, okay? So that's not absolutely true at all. I stand by this statement. Unlike other films you mentioned, DC Studios is essentially a brand new entity with the express purpose of making films to exploit the rich history of DC Comics. If Gunn Superman fails, that's literally the end of the studio. Immense stakes. Well, to be quite frank with you, it's not necessarily the end of the studio, as Walter Amada failed so much. And James Gunn also, if he fails, so what? There's no DC Studios. No problem with that. There'll still be DC movies. In fact, my friend Damian Anton Vincent, he thinks that DC Studios is a redundancy, and that does not work for Warner Brothers. It should have been Abdi and DeLuca over DC. They were doing a much better job than James Gunn was doing. So I have to disagree with that. Anyway, he's saying it's immense stakes. The only immense stakes is for James Gunn. All right, his universe won't launch, and we don't care. In fact, I don't know how to put this. I am rather indifferent whether his universe launches or not. I don't really care if it does or doesn't. Why? Because I'm all about the Snyderverse. I like the Snyderverse. I do not like what James Gunn has been doing. His last set of movies with the DC movies, his last set of TV shows, I have not been tuning in because I don't like it. Okay, so if he was to start a universe, I wouldn't be watching it because I don't like what he has to offer, and that's just it. I don't spend all my life and all my time berating it and hating on it and stuff. No, I just don't watch it and I just forget about it. I don't follow up on those things. Marvel movies, I don't go berating and hating them and saying all kinds of nasty things about them. No, I just don't go watch them because it's not my thing. It's that simple. So Becco Movie said, we want the Snyderverse back. We're sick and tired of getting this mediocre crap, especially after Gunn took over. So we will do whatever it takes. If WB is failing, is what it takes to be it, so be it. Restore the Snyderverse. So Robert Mayer said, I want the Snyderverse back. Have you ever asked Zack Snyder what he wants? The man has moved on. Let him create something new. So that's what Robert Mayer Burnett said. And to which all of these replies, I don't want to reply. I don't want to say my reply first. I want to go to other replies. You can, if you want, you can go to the Twitter link and see what I said. It doesn't really matter what I said. John Baker said, "Well, actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna do John Baker. I'm not even gonna do John Baker. Forget that. I'm gonna do something else." Okay. Double MJ says, you're so full of shit and you know it, which is one of the many reasons why I'll never take you losers seriously.
Fans will be very happy. I will be very happy. And about, but I don't know, if Netflix finally has it and you could hypothetically continue, would you be open to it?
If Netflix had owned the rights to the DC characters in my extended universe, of course, I would absolutely whatever.
Fans will be very happy. Yeah. I will be very happy. And about, but I don't know if Netflix.
So he's saying if Netflix was to have the Snyderverse characters or get the IP for the Snyderverse, would he do it? And he said absolutely yes. So where Robert Mayer Burnett said Zack Snyder has moved on, which is not true. Clearly the evidence supports otherwise. The thing that we have on our side, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what area you're talking about, I want you guys to understand there's a principle to this, right? So besides being in the zeitgeist, besides being referred to, and people can't afford, they they can't avoid not referencing the zeitgeist. The second thing is we talked about keeping things in remembrance. The third thing that's very important here that we see is presenting facts. When you are on the side of truth, you can present facts, you can present information that is exposing these people. The important thing to understand in whatever movement you may be in is that whatever movement you're in, make sure it's based on truth, of course. And what you're pushing for, make sure you bring facts to the table. Remember, it's a numbers game. If there's sufficient of you that breaks critical mass so that something goes into the zeitgeist, from there on in, it's all about reminding people, showing people why, the reason why you're doing what you're doing. And then, of course, the last thing, making sure you bring facts to the table. It's very important. Facts are the foundation under which people are persuaded about something. So I say this to say that when he said Zack has moved on, bam, they dropped immediately that Zack has expressed his interest that he would jump at restoring the Snyderverse tomorrow if allowed the opportunity. So there you go. So I just wanted to bring that to the table. What makes Restore the Snyderverse successful and why it is the only thing out there that's right now, even remotely, in terms of universes of DC, remotely desirable, because the alternatives they're not good. And that's the problem. There's nothing better out there right now in terms of DC. There's nothing. And there's no imagination, there's no creativity. People are copying what Zack does. And that's the problem. So no matter how much Robert Mayer tries to bat for Warner Brothers, be that supposedly independent offshoot, but still promoting Warner Brothers, still feeding back into Warner Brothers. No matter how much, for example, OAC and Bernie Sanders try to promote an independent approach, and try and rebrand the Democratic Party. They're pro-Democratic Party. Robert Mayer is pro-Warner Brothers. They're a spokesperson for Warner Brothers. So you can see and expose where he's coming from almost immediately. If Warner Brothers gives a green light for Zack Snyder's Justice League 2, you'll suddenly hear his tune change. And he's in support of it and stuff because what is it going on in the background? It's happening. So a guy like that, he's preaching this narrative because Warner Brothers want the Superman movie to be successful. So he has to change his tune to adjust to that. He's not the stupid. He knows Restore the Snyderverse. He knows that it's not butts out there like they're trying to say, I saw a couple of articles, really, really stupid articles talking about how, Snyder fans are Snyder butts. And there's all kinds of lies that are put out there. You think of, politically speaking, when we talk about Palestine, for example, they talk about, these pro-Hamas people who are paid by Hamas. We know these are fake narratives. All right. And it could only come from corporate heads. Corporate heads come up with the dumbest ideas ever. Right. And so incompetent is the American government right now that, it isn't funny. It's just hilarious to watch them tell all these lies, and easily these lies are exposed. And the public's beginning to catch wind of that. When Free Palestine becomes part of the zeitgeist, which it's on the threshold of being there. I know everybody in the world knows about this. A lot of people are, they're very depressed about it and what's happening. And a lot of people can't turn their face or eyes to it. But when it gets into the zeitgeist, it's going to get into, there's a threshold where it's going to get into the zeitgeist. And once that happens, it really doesn't matter what anybody says. They're going to throw jabs at it. They're going to call people pro-Hamas. They're trying to heavily clamp down on it. But you can't stop a movement, not an individual, a movement. The thing about CIA and all these operations is They try to get the heads of something. But when it's a movement, a real movement doesn't have a real head. It rolls on without a head, without whatever, because it's its own thing. That's why they can't beat Hezbollah. That's why they can't beat Hamas. That's why they can't beat the Houthis. You understand? Because it's a movement. And yes, it has leaders and heads, but it's not dependent on them to keep going. They can't get rid of Iran, even though they assassinated the president of Iran, or they assassinated the head of research and stuff, because Iran is not dependent on any one individual. They're trying to make it sound like China, Xi Jinping is an autocratic dictator and blah, blah, blah. They're trying to make it sound like Russia is only about Putin, Putin, Putin. That might be so that Putin is the head of Russia. It might be so that Xi Jinping is the head of China. And they respect and honor their heads. But if Xi Jinping is replaced tomorrow, it's not going to change nothing in terms of China's policy. If Putin is replaced tomorrow, it's not going to change anything on Russia's policy, because Putin consults with a whole set of people before he makes any move. And Xi Jinping, the same thing. In fact, he is considered one of them, representative of them, just as Putin is considered one of the Russian people and representative of their voice. And that's different to being a dictator and only what he said. China's attitude towards their leaders is different to Americans' attitude towards their leaders. The Chinese, the Japanese, they believe in respect and honor. But they also expect their leaders to be held accountable if they do wrong. The last leader of China was on charges of corruption of some sort, and he was removed from power. Okay, so they have a system in place. Now, I'm saying this to say you have to respect different systems, whether the system is communist, socialist, or whether you think it's communist, capitalist, whatever you think it is, socialist, capitalist, whatever you think the system is. You have to respect the system. Now, if you have a democracy, then that system should be functioning as it's supposed to. I digress. The point I was making was that the movements are not dependent on any one particular individual. And that's the important thing to understand. So whatever endeavor you have and your passion is towards, whether it's Free Palestine, whether it's Feed America, whether it's seeing more equity amongst people, working people particularly, and closing that gap between the working class and the elite class, or the rich class, the wealthy class, closing that gap economically. Whether your passion is in sponsoring healthcare and making sure healthcare gets better, or in seeing people have abilities that they didn't have before, such as people born blind being able to see and getting this technology to the world. Whatever it is that you are campaigning for, understand the basic principles. One, being part of a zeitgeist makes you inescapable. People can't avoid speaking about you. Two, understand a sense of history. And always recap the history so people are always refreshed about what it is, where this came from, its origins. Three, make sure whatever you do that you back it up with truth. Don't back it up with lies. Things that are built on lies, they don't last. And four, whatever you're doing or whatever part of movement you are in, ensure that you stay consistent and you keep pushing. Inconsistency is a problem. That's how things fall apart. Be consistent with your message. Once it passes critical mass, it'll be part of the zeitgeist. But even then, you still have to keep pushing it, because this is pop culture. Things can pop up and disappear. Things that last, they last because people persist. And they constantly persist. So that's what I got for you guys. It's now half an hour I've been in. Much love to all of you. I know some of you that I'm speaking to, you're under some tremendously difficult conditions. And so before I leave, I want to say unequivocally, free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Much love to you guys. Stay positive. Keep pushing. Keep fighting. Shout out to Ascalon Falcon. Shout out to Mohammed. I know you guys are Snyder fans. And also shout out to my boys in Palestine who are, man, y'all are survivors. I ain't gonna lie. Y'all, but they're trying to raise funds. So guys, if you can support them in some way so that they can get some money to buy food. People are eating grass, ladies and gentlemen. It's gotten that bad. So hang in there, people.